Good morning students, welcome to the English class. I am Dr. Tripti Gupta from Shiv Jyoti Education Group, Kota. So students, today we are going to take up a revision session for our Hornbill book of the prose section of Hornbill. Okay. So students, let us start with our first chapter. So students, our first chapter is The Portrait of a Lady, written by Khushwant Singh. Now here in this story, he has described his beautiful relation and bond with his grandmother, and this story, the way the chapter describes the various phases of their relationship, how it was been in childhood and then how it matured and then shifted to the city area, and there were gradual changes in his education system, and finally he he was in higher education and later he went out for his further education to London, and there when he came back, then how exactly the things happened and how she passed away. So this is all the way basically how he narrates how he was along with his grandmother. So students, let us start with a short summary of this chapter here. Khushwant Singh describes his intimate relationship with his grandmother and the beautiful time they spent together. So, the narrator's parent left him in the village with her when they went to live in the city. He shared the same room with his grandmother and they soon developed a strong bond. So, both went to school together, as the school was adjacent to the temple. That was this was a Sikh family and she used to go to Gurudwara and the school was just next to it. She used to carry several stale chapatis to feed the village dogs. When his parents got settled in the city, they sent for them. It was a turning point in their relationship. So, after his primary schooling, so they shifted to city and there came a change in their relationship. He was admitted to an English school. The grandmother no longer accompanied him to the school. Now, this was an aspect which made her, and the another aspect was the English medium schools, the subjects were quite different, and studying science and music and all these things were not being accepted well by his grandmother. She remonstrated silently when she came to know that he was being taught Western science. She was distressed to hear that music lessons were imparted in the city schools. To her, Western music had obscene associations. Now, this was her feeling and a strong thought about, like, she thinks like that music is not good for the kids of good families. So, with all these things, but she just retreated back in a silent manner, and she was she confined herself in her own ways of living there in the city. Now here she was not going out much, not feeding dogs, but she started feeding sparrows. Okay. So, when the family moved to the city, the gap between the city habits and the traditional practices of the villages became more ostensible. Now, the grandson was inculcating the ways of the city and the grandmother felt left out as she had no knowledge of English and subjects taught in secular schools. So, culture clash became unavoidable. So, there was lot of things which she was not being able to accept, the new ways of the city, the new education system, and that is why this bond between both the grandmother and Khushwant Singh was going a little bit like in a dampened manner. Okay. So, when the grandson entered university, he was given a room of his own. So, when he grew up, further he went to university, he separated and now he had his own room. Okay. Then she accepted her seclusion with resignation. From morning till evening, she used to sit by her wheel spinning and reciting her prayers. So, the various activities which she took out of seclusion was that she started spinning wheel, then she used to recite her prayer while spinning the wheel, and these were the few of the things which she took up as a activity for her. The happiest hour of the day for her was when she would feed the sparrows. At this point in the story, we can feel the grandmother establishing a spiritual bond with birds and animals. So, there was a special bond which was developed between the grandmother and the sparrow she used to feed. They used to come and sit on her head, on her hands, everywhere, and they were hardly, the presence of grandmother was being cherished by the sparrows. Okay. So, when the grandson decided to go abroad for further studies, grandmother came to see him off. Her emotions were under complete restraint, her mind was lost in prayers, and she said nothing at all. So, while departing, while leaving the country, she was there, she was quite serene and composed, but she did not felt any emotion, whereas the author, he was feeling like probably he may not be able to see his grandmother again, maybe she may not survive for 5 more years. Okay. So, with that feeling of insecurity, he left the place. After 5 years, when the grandson was back, she didn't look a day older. That was the only day that she had omitted to pray. So, when he returned back, she finally gave up her prayer, and she was looking as the way he left her 5 years back, and she looked the same. And in the evening, she collected the women of neighborhood, got an old drum and thumped it for hours together, singing the homecoming of warriors. So, she celebrated the return, that the author was back as the homecoming of warriors, and she sang songs for that, and along with all the women from her neighborhood, and she kept on singing and thumping for the complete evening. Everybody was been feeling that probably she may get stressed because of that. Okay. So, she overexerted herself so much that she fell ill, and she developed a mild fever. Intuitively, she felt that her end was near, and she did not want to waste time, and only prayed that moment. So, after some time, she declared that probably her end is quite near, and she stopped talking to everybody and she was just indulged in her prayer only. She passed peacefully while telling the beads of her rosary. So, she was been telling the beads, turning the beads of her rosary, and at that same time, somewhere in the afternoon, she passed away. Now, after that, when her body, her love for birds and animals, her own family gave her some sort of an intuitive power. So, she sang of homecoming of warriors on the day her see what happened exactly is that she, when she was been singing, she celebrated everything, and by the end of the day she realized that the purpose of her, she has made all the purposes of her life done, and that is why she realized that probably she is going to die. So, at this point she appeared to have gained a spiritual intuition, and she seemed to have a premonition of her death. She is a warrior who is returning to her abode after a long struggle. So, now it seems that her struggle was over and she was returning back. In that manner, she finally passed away. Arrangements were made for her funeral. When her dead body was lying on the floor, many sparrows came and sat by her. So, the narrator's mother offered them some breadcrumbs, but they took no notice and flew away quietly when the corpse was lifted to be taken to the cremation ground. Now, this was a special aspect which happened over there. All the sparrows, thousands of birds were being there, hundreds of number, and they were being just silently being there gathered, and they did not feed anything. And the only thing what happened was, they were not chirping, they were not taking the breadcrumbs also, not eating them, and what exactly they were being there for, to give tribute to the spiritual, to the beautiful soul which has departed from the world, who was the caretaker, who was the loving soul amongst them. Okay, that was the grandmother. The sparrows refusing the breadcrumbs when offered by the author's mother depicts the attachment they had with his grandmother. The bond between the sparrows and the grandmother was spiritual and unconditional. The grandmother shows how love can transcend all differences and create everlasting bonds. So, this bond between the author and the sparrows was been a very strong bond which could be which was reflected at the end of her, at that moment when her body was being taken away. So, this is how the chapter is all about. So, students, I hope you will be able to understand it well. Okay, student, now let us move to our chapter number 3, Discovering Tut. The saga continues, written by A.R. Williams. So, this chapter is about an Egyptian king, very young king, who died in some very suspicious circumstances, and his body was being recovered when it was being from the its mummy was being found in that pyramid, and that is how this pyramid was being discovered. And then it was with the first mummy which was being scanned, and this is how the story is being about. This chapter describes how this mummy has been, the Tutankhamun life was, and it revealed lots of facts about its life and the reasons for death. Now, let us see the summary over here. Tut was the last heir of the powerful Egyptian dynasty. He died in teens about 3300 years ago. Laden with gold, he was laid to rest, was eventually forgotten. No, so this he was being forgotten over there, being as a mummy over there, and later it was being discovered. His unexpected demise was a big event, and the reasons for his death remained unclear. So, this became a mystery, that why this king died at a so young age, and two of the biggest questions about him are still unanswered. How did he die, and how old was he at the time of his death? So, these were the two basic most important significant mysteries which were required to be solved, which were unclear. And English archaeologist Howard Carter discovered his tomb in 1922. Howard Carter found 3 nested coffins of Tut. On opening the first one, he saw a shroud decorated with garlands, willow, olive and lotus petals and cornflowers, the faded evidence of a burial in March or April. He encountered a major problem when he finally reached the mummy. So, it became very difficult for him to finally examine the mummy, because it was being glued at the base, and it became very difficult now to take out the mummy out of the coffin. They chiseled it, they hammered it, and that actually resulted in damaging the mummy a lot. The ritual resins had hardened, which left Tut cemented to the bottom of the gold coffin. He tried hard to loosen the resins by putting the mummy in the sunlight, but he failed. So, he had to chisel away the solidified resins to raise the king's remain. If he had not done so, thieves would have cut it apart to remove the gold. So, it was, since it was laden with gold, lots of treasures were there along with his mummy. So, that is why it became very important to protect. So, that is why the mummy was required to be removed away, but it damaged the mummy in that process. Okay. The Tut's body was lavished with glittering goods, precious collars, inlaid necklaces and bracelets, rings, amulets and ceremonial aprons, sandals, sheaths of his fingers and toes, and an iconic inner coffin mask, all of pure gold. Carter's men removed the mummy's head and separated almost every part and joint. So, this is how they found lots of treasures in his tomb. The mummy had to undergo a CT scan in order to unveil numerous mysteries about Tut's life and death. Many tourists from all over the world came to see the most famous mummy. The mummy was in a deplorable state. So, because of all that process, which while when what was being handled badly by Howard Carter's team, so the mummy was in a state which was actually, which made it very in a very miserable position, okay, and it became a attraction among the tourists. In the year 2005, more than 3,300 years after his death, King Tut's mummy became one of the first mummies to undergo a CT scan in death as in life, moving regally ahead of his countrymen. So, he was first the most youngest king to die. When he was living also, he was the very young king who died, and now even after death his mummy was the first mummy to be scanned. The CT scan was led by Zahi Hawass and done with a portable CT machine which was been given to them by National Geographic Society. The scan came up with new clues about his life and death. It provided precise data for an accurate forensic reconstruction of King Tut. Due to sand in the cooler fan of CT machine, they had to use 2 plastic fans to complete the scanning process. So, the Zahi Hawass, he started this total process of scanning Tut's mummy, and while they were been doing they came across with lots of hurdle. The fan was not been working. They arranged some external fans, and finally the scanning was been done. Even the environment outside, the atmosphere became so weird, and it was been there was all of a sudden there were strong winds were been blowing, and all the things were very strange environment was there at that time. Everything went off smoothly. After the completion of scan, his mummy was carried back to his tomb. Just above Tut's tomb stood a cluster of stars known as Orion, watching over the boy king. So, basically Orion is the constellation which is the god, an Egyptian god who is for afterlife, okay, and that Orion cluster has been looking at the it is such the gate of that mummy, that tomb was such that it was been seemed that that Orion looks after the boy who was been resting there, okay. So, his mummy was finally been laid back in that tomb, and when the archaeologists left, the wind had stopped and the surrounding came to a deadly silence. So, finally when everything was been done, the team left, the environment went calm again and it was at peace. Finally the disturbances stopped, and that is how the things went on. So, students, let us move to our next chapter here, chapter number 4, that is the landscape of the soul, written by Nathalie Trouveroy. So, this chapter is a description about how the art forms are in the various regions of this world, how it evolved and developed, and there is a comparison being drawn between the Chinese art form and the European art form. So, let us see how the chapter starts with certain different classic stories about the art form, and this it starts with a story about Wu Daozi, who was commissioned to paint a landscape by a king. Okay, the emperor was impressed by the painting, and when the painting was over, finally the emperor was being shown that painting. Nature was depicted in its glorious aspect in the painting. The mountains, forests, clouds, men and birds, the complete picture was the painting was extraordinarily wonderful painting about all the various natural elements were the part of that picture. Composition of extraordinary beauty was being there, and while analyzing, while viewing that painting, the painter Wu Daozi, he asked the emperor that let me show you the way to understand this painting, to have a view of this painting. And then there was a cave in the painting where a spirit lived. So he told about that this painting is having a, and when he showed that cave in, and he told about the spirit of this painting lives in this particular cave. The painter clapped his hand and the cave opened. Painter entered the cave and the door closed behind him. The painting disappeared from the wall. So finally, after this painter Wu-Daozi, as he clapped and he entered the cave, and he was asking emperor to come along with him so that he can show the inner beauty of that cave. But the moment he went inside, the cave closed and the painting disappeared. So these are some of the classic stories about one of the story. And the next thing is the doctrines of Confucius and Zhuangzi disclose the spirit of the art. The Asian paintings reflect the nature of inner life and spirituality. So this was about the basic aspect of the Chinese painting, was that the nature was being shown, it is being painted in with a very beautifully in an manner, in an abstract manner, okay, and with lots of spirituality being the part of those paintings, okay. Whereas European paintings focus on realism, the way the exact life is. The European paintings depict the same real things which are there in practical, okay. So wants the viewer to see a painting through the painter's eyes, okay. So this is how the painter wants that the painting should be judged, should be understood, interpreted with through the painter's eyes. Now there is another story about Quentin Metsys, a blacksmith who loved a painter's daughter. Now this blacksmith, since the painter was quite renowned, so the painter wouldn't accept him as his son-in-law because he was a blacksmith. Entered the studio and painted a fly on the canvas. So now what he did, he just went inside his studio and painted a fly on the canvas on the outside, and when the painter came in, he tried to make that fly to move away, swat away the fly, but then he realized that it was not a real fly, it was a painting. Now looking at his immense talent of Quentin, he accepted him as his apprentice, and also later on he married his daughter also. So he immediately accepted Quentin as his apprentice and became one of the most renowned artists of his age. So this is how the European painting, another classic story, has been shared here. Now the contrast between Chinese and European painting has been drawn in the chapter, that how they both are being different, that the Chinese landscape is not meant to reproduce an actual view. It is an abstract kind of description of depiction of natural elements, where there is water and mountain, the concept of Xing and Zhang, okay. And whereas European painter wishes a viewer to borrow his eyes. So European paintings are quite realistic paintings, and they want the viewer to view from the painter's viewpoint, okay, from his eyes. Chinese art is essentially spiritual. So there is a lot of spiritual factor involved in Chinese art. Now here Jean Dufault concept of art birth and our outsider art. So there is another concept of outsider art is also being described in the chapter, where they tell about that those artists who have not actually been given a formal training about painting, but they are very creative and talented people, and they come out with lots of creativity, the art of the people who have no formal training. So such people, such creativity and such art has been given acceptance, though the word classic painting, the painters, they do not accept them, they consider them to be outsider. Okay. In India, we have a wonderful creation done by Nek Chand, that is the rock garden in Chandigarh, and it was been a wonderful creation of his, where he cleared a patch of wilderness to set up a garden. Sculptures made from stone and recycled materials. This rock garden was being completely creation with the help of all waste things and stones and other materials which could be recycled. Rock garden, an epitome of creativity and innovation, and it was being acknowledged in various on international manner. It was been there on the cover page of a magazine also. So, that is how his work, his creativity was being acknowledged. Okay. India's greatest contribution to the outsider art. So, this rock garden became the one of the beautiful creations in this outsider art section, and it was the greatest contribution from India to this section.